In the poem The Wedding, Alvi expresses one's struggle to adapt to life in England. Using an extended metaphor of marriage for migration, the speaker migrants not only from one country to another, but also goes from one culture, one language, one way of living to another. The poem explores the themes of disappointment due to cultural assimilation and her desires, as well as the difficulties of having a dual cultural identity. Through Alvi's various eloquent literary techniques, the poet illustrates the variance of dread that the poetic persona lives due to transitions and changes. The poem begins with the line, "I expected a quiet wedding," which establishes the tone of disappointment in the poetic voice with the phrase, "I expected." Alvi sets the conflicting situation the speaker has come to face from the very beginning. The speaker's expectation of a quiet wedding connotes a Western-style ceremony which shows the influence of Western culture on her. At the same time, the quietness contrasts with a typical Asian, especially Pakistani, wedding as it often becomes a big celebration with loud and noisy events, thus it presents a clash of ideas in the speaker's own mind. The speaker continues to describe her imagined, ideal wedding with the line, "High above a lost city, a marriage to balance on my head." The phrase "high above" suggests that in her expectations, she and her bridegroom would be away from the world's reach and be free from society's order and traditions. It conveys a sense of yearning to escape the speaker's current situation. However, the speaker contradicts herself with the line, "The ceremony tasted of nothing." Clearly, the speaker here is unsatisfied with her actual wedding, and it had little color. Comparing her imagination, the poet utilizes both gustatory and visual description to show the bland and plain atmosphere. In addition, she might find the wedding tasted of nothing because she is lamenting the cultural values which are absent in one of the most important celebrations of her life. At the same time, a simple wedding is precisely what the speaker wants, suggesting her struggle and dissatisfaction to carry the duality of her culture and traditions. The poem is written in tercets, 3-line stanzas, but with an irregular syllabic structure and lacking a rhyme scheme. The lack of pauses in this poem makes the persona seem like she is in a rush, giving the feeling she is running out of time and is about to be caged. It also hints towards the theme of displacement and being victimized by one's surroundings running along the lines of the poem, as sentences in the poem are cut off by various run-on lines and stanza breaking. It may further symbolize the speaker's lack of control and how there seems to be no balance due to her powerlessness. Using parallelisms such as "I expected," "I insisted," and "I wanted," these phrases provide an imperative tone to the speaker which constantly remind us of the persona's individualistic I, giving the idea she wants things to suit her wishes. Though, it seems as if she is only narrating her thoughts and desires to the reader, rather than the guests, the relatives, or the wedding planner in the poem, providing the reader with a feeling of helplessness as she did in the situation. On the other side, throughout the poem, the wedding guests are seeing the speaker as the subject to be exploited. The poet describes the guests as stealthy as sandalwood smugglers, presenting a tone of despise and contempt from the poetic voice. Sandalwood is a high-quality scented wood that would be expensive and represent prestige, while the adjective stealthy and smugglers connote a pejorative tone. Wedding guests, what seems to be well respected and regarded, are juxtaposed with the simile to compare to smugglers. The use of sibilants creates a harsh and menacing sounding that presents the guests in an unexpected corrupt way. The unusual action of the wedding guests is continued with the line, "They scratched at my veil like beggars on a car window," where the wedding guests are described with impolite and imposing actions since they believe her to be a wealthy foreigner. The aggressive verb scratched creates a feeling of foreboding that the speaker will end up as a bruised victim, hence she brings the veil imagery, which separates her, confronting the insecurities of being in the hands of these people. The veil is denoting her wedding veil, which can also be representing the traditional veil from the Indian culture. The bleak and violent imagery displays the feeling of being on edge from the speaker. When Alvi describes the wedding guests' suitcase as England spilled out, the poet displays how the speaker bears testimony that the guests have now been transformed into non-Pakistani entities, who are separated from their birth traditions and who have neglected their cultural being to embrace their host country's values. There is a sense of neglect with their own, traditional culture, presenting a sense of betrayal. The phrasal verb spilled out suggests a feeling of inevitability as the speaker cannot do anything to stop it, displaying an image of waves consuming her. The fact that England is coming out of their suitcases displays the British influence on the Indian and Pakistani culture because their traditional culture is non-existent in their luggage. As a result, their original culture is diminishing. The decline of the Indian and Pakistani culture is explored further with the line "We travelled along roads with English names." The enjambment and caesura of the phrase "English names" again suggests a feeling of alienation and loneliness. It provides details of the extent of British colonization in Pakistani infrastructure. The poet further describes the feeling of the wedding guests having ill intentions towards the bride when Alvi describes the speaker's dowry as a smile, a shadow, a whisper. The smile can be interpreted as how simple her dowry is. As dowry is the property or the money, paid by the bride's family to the groom or his family at the time of marriage, it represents the patriarchal society since the female side of the family has to pay to get married. It signifies the materialistic goods that seem preferable to the wedding guests. The following phrase, a shadow, a whisper, can be the guest's reaction to the simple dowry, highlighting their expectation of wealth from the bride's family. These two nouns are oxymoronic to the beginning of the line, a smile, presenting the differences in ideology and beliefs between the wedding guests and the speaker. Throughout the poem, Alvi also presents the distant relationship between the speaker and her fiancé, possibly because of the difference in cultures. With the line, "Our eyes changed color like traffic lights," the poet illuminates the flickering doubts and thoughts in their heads as traffic lights are constantly changing their colors. Each color in the traffic lights could connote a type of emotion for their new marriage life: green with happiness and excitement, yellow, flickering doubts and uncertainty, red, fear and potential disappointment. The enjambment in this sentence forcefully makes a pause while reading, suggesting hesitation and uncertainty. Moreover, this observation is spoken by an anonymous they, as the following sentence, "So they said." This further shows the detached relationship between the bride and the fiancé. It implies that even an outsider can tell their relationship does not seem close. Additionally, the two betrothed are not even allowed to look at each other for comfort, as the speaker says that the time was not ripe for them to view each other. The verb ripe could suggest the development of their relationship and marriage, at the same time it relates to the fruit of their love, perhaps a potential baby. It also suggests that there will be a time that their relationship will get closer, yet, at this point in the poem, they are very distant. However, Alvi ends the poem abruptly with the line, "and imprints like maps on our hands." Through the use of the visual image of the couple's difficulty and mixed emotions, the poet suggests a moment of the finality of facing the future uncertainty. The imprints on the couple's hand could suggest the line and the journeys they will have to take in the future. The plural noun maps highlights multiculturalism that is present throughout the poem, which could represent the differences and similarities between England and Pakistan. Not arriving at her heart's destination, but being lost and requiring a map. While this shows how the speaker is lost and her thoughts are muddled, the hands connotes the sense of unity of feelings from the speaker and the fiancé. Plus the full stop of this single-line stanza, Alvi suggests a sense of a bond among the couples. Furthermore, unlike the rest of the poem, which is written in tercets, the last stanza is only one line, which produces a dramatic effect on the audience. It may also show that while it might be the end of her wedding story, it's not the end of her marriage, thus leaving spaces for the reader to ponder over the complexities the couple is bound to face, as she is encountering the mere beginning of another phase in her life. The change in the poetic voice's mindset is displayed with the poet's use of pronouns. At the start of the poem, the speaker continuously uses first-person singular pronouns such as I, and singular possessive pronouns such as my. Plus, with the use of they and their at the beginning of the poem, the poet gives the feeling of separation and displacement for the speaker and the rest of her environment. However, towards the end of the poem, while the singular pronouns are still present, there are more instances of first-person collective pronouns, such as we, us, and our. This suggests a sense of coming togetherness with her beloved and opening a new chapter of her life. In conclusion, despite its celebratory title, The Wedding paints a picture that's far gloomier than the happiness and joy it suggests. Alvi presents negative emotions experienced by the persona with her disappointment and loneliness which are rife throughout. The poet wishes to reflect her feelings and confusion about her identity and where exactly Alvi herself fits in the persona of the bride. While the clash of Eastern and Western cultures is prevailing in this poem, Alvi provides a sense of hope with the final line, suggesting a potential middle ground that one can find in the state of confusion.